joining us. Really interesting role that you've got around being leader of community partnerships and pathways for Broken Bay. Tell us a little bit about your role and your background.
In my background, well,
yeah, a little bit. I know you. Well, you had a very relevant prior role to that.
Yes, I did actually. So for the ones that have been watching me in term 2, I had long hair. So when the hairdressers finally opened up at the end of COVID, I just went in and chopped 35 centimeters off. So I look a bit different.
Great.
But still the same person. As said by Liv, I am the leader of community partnerships and pathways. And what I do, my role is that I basically work alongside the careers advisors within the Broken Bay system. And I have the 4 schools here in the Northern Sydney area, which I'm working with. So how does that work? The careers advisor works one-on-one with students. And in my role, I work with the careers advisor, opening up industry opportunities for students to get to know different industries better. But I also work with the teachers to see how can we integrate careers and how can we integrate industry into the subject you are teaching. So basically moving everything from outside into the school system for students to learn and to experience what kind of different industries are out there. That's in short what I do within the Broken Bay Diocese. And prior to that, I worked for TAFE New South Wales in managing the TFED program. So hence I've got to know a lot of the careers advisors out there in the Northern Sydney area. And I could exactly see what's happening there and what information do you need and what's happening with the career systems within the different schools as well, which was really interesting for me to watch. And it's kind of created a passion for me as well to say, hey, there's so much more we can do in that space. But let's see what else we can do, and let's see how we can work together, and let's see how we can serve as many students as we can, because let's face it, that the next generation, they're most likely the ones that will look after us when we are in the retirement village. Mm-hmm. So I think the more information we can share, the more we can raise the bar for them, and the more opportunities we can open to them, they can find a passion that means that they'll be happy in the work they're doing and in the career path they're going into.
So it's a really, in terms of all the different skills we talked about and the different challenges and different knowledge base that we need to arm students with, that focus is really on that kind of opening up that world and divergent thinking rather than the traditional, let's make a decision towards the end.
Yeah, I think what you can see is the industry is ready. The industry is ready to work with schools, but they have no idea how they can bridge that gap between the industry and education. If you look at it the other side, the other way around, you can see that education is ready to work with the industry as well. But we face all those obstacles with timetabling, we face obstacles with teachers, how do we integrate it in the curriculum? We don't have much space in the curriculum at the moment to add all those different emerging industries basically into it. And I think that's something we need a bunch of really enthusiastic people to say, okay, let's go to the syllabus. Let's go and look at all those units. How can we connect virtual reality into our science classes? Are the units that match? So we're able to transfer those skills into the science classes, for example. And I think at the moment we're able to do that and make our teachers the career ambassadors for the subject they teach. The easier the role will be for the careers advisor, the easier my role will be within the diocese as well, because students will get to know all those different industries by basically following all the subjects at school.
Yeah, that's like the nirvana, and you're kind of forging the path.
Yes.
You make it sound very easy. And so as well as that, and we're going to get on to more about that in a minute, you also have a role supporting those careers advisors in schools because they don't have that much time, or when things get tricky. How does that work?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. How I support the careers advisors is within the diocese. For us, there are no full-time positions, so there are 0.2 or 0.4 in the teaching next to it. So for them to have that broad scope of industries available, or to say they have a student and we have no idea what they want to do, but they might have a slight interest in engineering, or they have heard from an uncle that cybersecurity is completely hot at this stage. That's when they transfer them over to me and say, okay, talk to Ms. Timmerman and have a conversation with her to say, cybersecurity is not the hackers with hoodies on. Cybersecurity is far bigger when it comes to all the different jobs available. So I'm basically the extension of the careers advisor to kind of expand the horizons for students.
And we talked a couple of weeks ago in this session about the different kind of parent personas that you come across and what those challenges are. And I'm suspecting that if you get the challenge cases that aren't flowing through the system smoothly, then you see quite a lot of those. What are some of those parent personas you see? All the biggest challenges.
We all know how those parents are. It is different. You know, there are a lot of parents out there who have no idea how the TAFE pathways work, who have no clue what the benefit is of an apprenticeship, or they hear all those horror stories that you get underpaid. And so I think our job as well as the school system is to educate our parents to say, hey, it is okay for students to go into a TAFE pathway after school. It is okay for students to leave after year 10 at the moment he or she has something lined up that's really suitable, or where the student is really passionate about. So yes, we do get pushback. Quite often though, when you go into conversation and you basically draw all those different pathways out, you explain to them that even when a student leaves in year 10 and does a diploma course can be a pathway back into university, for example. It is not because the student leaves in year 10 that is the end of the world and there's no way you can go back into university. So there's education that needs to be done from our side to explain to parents, you know, those are all the different pathways nowadays. And look as well to the whole generation changing when it comes to preferences. You know, we're not raising a generation that is focused on getting rich and wanting to live in the biggest house and drive the most expensive cars. We're raising a generation that is focused on happiness. They want to be happy. This is a generation that's going to job swap probably every 2 years because they get bored in a job and they want to do something else because it doesn't make them happy. And, you know, that is something we need to work with the industry with as well, that we created awareness that it is a different generation that will be entering the workforce, and are we ready for that?
Yeah, I think, I think they're going to naturally behave that way and grow up that way, and it's the normal for them. And it's probably parents that are still creating this pressure back onto schools about, you know, we talked at length last week about this expectation of path A is university, and students that you should use every ounce of your ATAR almost. So if you could be a doctor, you should be a doctor. Almost that concept that you aim as high as possible on what scale is kind of crazy, and it's almost taking that scale away of what success is. But you said most parents, and we talked about the using that research study from the UK that Seeker had commissioned, that we have these career aspirant parents, which is like the high support and low influence, and that when we see a lot of those parents that are high influence and high support, that they're quite easy to move away from that high influence if they know that there's other pathways to happiness almost.
Yeah, it is, you know, and as a parent, well, most of us most likely are parents. You want to have the best for your child. You want your child to be happy and alive and have enough financial freedom to be able to do things and not worry for what the day of tomorrow is going to bring. The only thing is, I think we need to educate our parents to say, you know, there's so many pathways out there. Look at the cybersecurity, look at VR, AR, where employers are coming back to me and say, Mel, we don't want to have university students because the technique they use, they're already behind. We want to have the high school students so we can train them on our technique and keep them up to date, because if we don't stay up to date, then we're falling behind and we get all kinds of security issues. So parents are not aware of that because they grew up in a period where the technological developments were far slower and went in a different way. You know, I still remember the dial-ins for the internet. That your mum or dad could not use the phone because otherwise you could not use the internet.
You just unplugged it. Yeah.
Yeah, just unplugged it to get you off the internet. So that is a learning curve for parents as well, because those are industries that have such a different branding. Students have no idea what's happening within those industries, and I go back to those industries and say, tell me what's happening there. Tell me what kind of jobs are available. Tell me what we can do to make it more attractive for students, that they don't go those traditional pathways. I don't know what I need to study, or I don't know what I want to do after school, so I pick business because it's nice and broad.
Yeah.
You know, we need to start in preferably year 5, year 6, by educating our students to have a look at what do you like, what is out there, how does it look like, what kind of jobs are there, what kind of jobs are coming up. It's a whole bigger conversation than only a 15-minute conversation you normally have. You pick your subjects, and another 15-minute conversation when you are in year 12.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you talked about there about the world of work is moving faster than any single curriculum could keep up with. So by the time, if we took AR and VR today and we said, okay, how do we design a curriculum that teaches that you're not saying we should, an industry don't want education to just take what they are and teach it, but they want almost a space in there.
They almost want to have space in there. Yeah.
So structure more like the free apprenticeships, where there's a dynamic, constantly evolving space for up-to-date technology and anything. I think it's not just tech, it's not the high tech, but it's everything. So it's having that space in the curriculum to be dynamic. But I think a structure is really important. So at St. Leo's, where you're based, how are you going about it with the teachers? If you've said that you want all the teachers to be the careers ambassadors for their subject, how are you doing it?
Well, I think you need to realise, and I use St. Leo's as my playground to kind of, it's my incubator to trial and error before I'll set different projects up at the other schools. For teachers, they go to school, they go into university, and they go back to school. And it's our job, I would say, as a support group at the school to kind of involve teachers in taking them out on excursions, which we can't at the moment, to keep them up to date with what's happening out there in the industry. There is no reason for a mathematics teacher not to teach careers. You have surveying companies out there that are more than willing to come to schools to do a session with students on surveying, to teach them how important it is to measure right and to have your corners right. Go to English. A lot of English teachers come back to me and say, but I'm teaching Shakespeare. How can we make Shakespeare relevant to the world of work? If you have students that want to study law, for example, and they have to go through 500 pages of hardcore English language, we can use the way how we read Shakespeare into the way how we read law documents, for example, legal documents later down the track. And it's the connections for those teachers to make it. Does everyone buy in? Absolutely not. But you need to find your early adapters at school that say, you know what, I'll give it a try. I actually really like this, or I don't know what I think about it, but you are enthusiastic about it. You organize a workshop for me, and let's go from there.
And what are the challenges for them? I mean, you've talked about curriculum time. How creative have you needed to be in terms of mapping things to the curriculum, or does it fall out quite easily?
I think at the moment you discuss it with them. You have your your certificate 2 in construction pathways where they talk about WHS issues. That's a unit in the syllabus. At the moment we take students out for a surveying and we combine the maths lesson with construction pathways lesson. That your WHS is we're standing out on the field. Okay, guys, what are the dangers? Do we have water with us? Do we need to have a hat? Do we need to wear sunglasses? That's all part of your WHS. But I think you need to bring that talk to the teachers first to say, this is how we can integrate it. It's risk management out there on the field. Can we involve the students in it to kind of look around and say, I've actually noticed those risks and this is what we can do about it. And then you make it real for them.
And is that one of the success stories, the surveyor example?
Surveyor, yeah. And we had a lady coming in and who started a home baking business last week, which was a great eye-opener for myself even as well. She makes really decorative cakes with edible flowers and has a big passion for it. And she started her master class with our hospitality students. And she said, today we're baking the pavlova with edible flowers, which sounds pretty simple if you look on the Instagram account and see what she's making. But how she started was basically, this is the first cake I sold when starting my business. And I baked this cake in my home kitchen. So for students afterwards, they started asking the questions on, okay, so you started with your pavlova. How did you sell your first pavlova? And she was a whole Instagram to it, and the students came back and said, okay, what kind of hashtags did you use for it? And I think what they walked out with, which was really funny, is they checked her car, and she was driving a big car. And the boy said, did you check out that car? She's driving an Audi. From going a home business to driving away in an Audi was such an eye-opener for a lot of students to say, hey, I don't need you to invest in to start my own business. I can actually start from home. Yeah. So I was hoping they picked up some hospitality skills there, which they for sure did. But the main thing they took out of it was, hey, even I can start a business. Yeah. And I think that was already a great win there. And they take that story home, and for sure they share it out with friends and parents as well. And that is what we want them to take home.
Yeah, I think that's one of all the different stories of kind of industry coming in or excursions going out. I'm always really committed to making sure that there's the industry specific draw, but that there's the generic kind of career learnings, and what are the twists and turns of that career, or the entrepreneurial learnings, or what is the one that's relevant to everyone, not just the people who are passionate about baking. Although I'm sure that was, I think we talked before about, the power of quality products, and, there's a big, project-based learning. We know that a public product and an authentic audience is so powerful for raising that learning. But I think something like that, which is super high quality, and you're seeing the inspiring output, could just light people up, rather than hearing about, or their imagination about, I'd love to be a pastry chef. Just actually seeing it come to life, and something Instagrammable. Yeah. What does it look like behind the scenes is so powerful.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me, it was the big learning that I thought, they walk away knowing now, I'm going to go home and I'm going to make that pavlova, and I'll go in the garden and I'll cut the flowers and put them on my pavlova. But they walked out with, geez, I can just start my own business from my living room, basically. And that was, for me, I thought, I need to level more with them and have that feedback to see what else is going on there, because that means that they have entrepreneurial inspirations. So I have to build further on that by organising a workshop around that, and get maybe people from the Sydney Startup Hub in and start talking about, how did you start? Did you start in your garage, like the Google boys, for example? There's so many great stories out there, and I think they need to hear that to realize, hey, I do have qualities, and I can even start at a young age.
Yeah, and I think even the little skills, like how do you go about naming a company? How do you go about, you don't have to be massive to design a logo that you can put out there, and with the importance of putting things out there to test it. And it's never been as easy to test your ideas out at no cost or little cost or time as now. So I think that makes it really exciting and tangible. And I think as well, it means that life isn't something that happens after all your study. Like, you can actually do things now, whether it's testing something out or actually just launching something, if you're ready to.
Yeah, and I think the earlier you start that process, I'm a big fan. I can't wait until they introduce it into primary schools as well, and get rid of Sam the fireman and Bob the builder, all those gender stereotypes out there. I think we have that conversation. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to talk about primary schools in this in a month, in not the one after, because you're right. It's even the case studies that are held up as shining examples of careers education in primary schools, it's still just about gender stereotypes, and we need to do so much better than that. So you've talked about the challenges from a teacher's perspective, and I think that sounds like making it easier for them to see the connections, actually introducing the connections and getting them involved. What about from the industry perspective? Are they ready? Are they willing? Is there anything stopping that?
I think there is no better time to start talking to your local and your broader industry partners out there, because a lot of people are still working from home. They have the feeling that they don't attribute to what they do at the moment in society. I've picked up that a lot of employers are actually really keen to work with schools, especially at this stage, to still continue to make an impact with the schools and with the local community. I think the biggest issue for them is that they have no clue how the Australian curriculum works. So they have those ideas like, I want to do this with the schools, I want to do that with the schools, those are the products I'm working on at the moment. And then, we fire back and say, okay, so how do you think we can implement it in school? And that's where the full silence is. So it is working with the industry partners as well. It's working with the Department of Industry, who's out there working actively with those big stakeholders to sit down and open up that really boring syllabus and go through it and see, okay, if we have an employer out there that is pioneering with holograms at the moment, do we have space in the Australian curriculum where we can add that hologramming into a workshop or a lesson, or do we have to run it as an extracurricular activity, for example? So there's work from our side that needs to be done, to have that conversation with the industry to see where we can glue it in.
And whose job should that be? Like, it's obviously a priority for everybody. You've got industry going, we've got a skills gap, we need to engage, we need the curriculum to be more dynamic, and we've got education saying we want it.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like in your case, it's your job.
Yeah, I work closely with we have a fantastic director of learning, and she is very creative when it comes to the curriculum. So you need to have that conversation between the school and the industry. You need to have it at a local level, because every school functions in a different way. You need to have the buy-in from your principal, for example, as well. If you have a principal that is still focused on high ATARs and in high scores in that direction, it will be really hard to open up the conversation to say, hey, I actually think we need to open up different pathways for our students, because we're dealing with different kids, different aspirations, different backgrounds. Not everyone will make it through to year 12. So having that backup from your principal, who is an advocate within the school, to say, hey, this is something I really want to do. And in my case, having the luck of a really good director of learning who said, I'll fix the curriculum up for you, is the way to go. You need to work at a local level.
Yeah, I mean, this comes up again and again. When we first started this series and we talked about the challenges to putting best practice into practice, the key factor seems to be the principal's values and probably the school's marketing as an extension of that. Do you see it as the number one?
Absolutely. The big talks going up at the moment to reach out for the Australian curriculum, and they want to have the career hubs up within the Department of Education. I can't wait to see how that goes, to be fairly honest with you, because I don't know how they're going to cope with that. Dealing on the distance, emailing a school in Waka Waka to say we have a fantastic workshop coming up. Let's do it on the 22nd of September. You need someone at the other side of the line in the school that says, yes, I like this workshop. I'm going to go down to my science department to have a chat to see how we can integrate it into one of the lessons. If you don't have that person, it's probably going to fall back on the careers advisor. But if the careers advisor is a 0.2 or 0.4, that would be doable for her or him.
Yeah, well, I think that's one big contentious point of big question that came up from the Looking to the Future report is what will happen. The careers hub's awesome if they have they're going to aggregate lots of resources and industry connections, but you still need someone in school for the counselling part and the guidance part. But I think the other thing is, if we want to broaden careers and its integration, you need that ambassador that's helping upskill all the teachers to integrate it, and that relationship with teaching and learning, and the buy-in from the principal. But you need that person, I think, that link in school, both for the guidance side and the whole school approach to drive it. Yeah, I mean, nobody said there won't be that person. It's just, it was obviously one of the big questions that came up when it becomes optional for schools to have that role. But yeah, I agree. It's so much more than having those workshops available.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the moment you're able to train your teachers in a way that they feel supported and they can see the benefits of adding the external components into what they're teaching. I would say teaching is becoming far more fun, because you're able to say, hey, I want to have a marketing person because I'm teaching, promoting and selling to my year 9 commerce students, for example. And you go back to your person in school and say, hey, do you have anyone in our network that we can approach to come into the school and teach more about how they sell their product, for example? It makes it more relevant for the students. If they have an exam coming up and they can't remember the answer because they've been studying too much, they can go back to those kind of live examples. Yes, we had that lady coming in who was talking about marketing. What did she say? Oh, she was doing it in a certain way. So it supports the students in the learning as well. And I dare to say that it will impact the overall results we will see in the HSC exams as well.
Will you be measuring that?
It'll be nice. On how can we measure that on?
Yeah. How do you isolate that? And so what you're getting feedback as the main measurement?
Well, we measure 5 feedback forms from the students to see, hey, at the beginning of the year, how is your motivation level in February when you start, and how is your motivation level in December when you wrap up, for example? Do you have to feel that you have learned more? What did you enjoy the most? Was it the practical side? Was it the learning side? Which subjects did you of your interest? So we can kind of filter out, okay, something is going wrong in the history department because we see a lot of negative answers, for example. Is there something we can do? Can we make it more interesting for them to get someone from outside into workshop around a certain theme, for example, a certain subject? That's the way how you can measure it. It's really brave to say, if you see an increase in your ATA scores, it's cool to say, no, yeah, that was me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure the teachers will be claiming stuff and the students as well. But it'd be great to see, I don't know how you'd measure it and isolate it. We'll have to talk to Evidence for Learning about it. There's such a shift, and it feels intuitively like so powerful. And we're all talking about, you know, how do we make more real world connections and make learning more relevant? And how do we close that skills gap and keep that dynamic space? It seems like a no-brainer, and it feels to me like once there's a model and proof that the students are more engaged, then the teachers, their subject teachers, would embrace it, because it's just going to make their subject more dynamic, more engaging.
Exactly.
So,
I think a lot of schools should not forget that they have a huge parent database as well. A lot of our parents are working, you know, send a survey out to the parents and say, hey, which industry are you working in? What do you do? And are you willing to share your story via even a 10-minute Zoom conversation in class, for example, that they can dial in from the workplace, to tell the students, say, hey, well, this is me. I'm a financial analyst at Westpac. This is how my day looks like. For students to get a head around, okay, you know, I'm studying maths. That means that I'm working with numbers, and this is how I use numbers in a possible workplace, for example. You can get the parents into the classroom and let them talk. Maybe you work close enough with parents, you can say, can we set up a workshop? Are we able to integrate a couple of subjects together and let them work on a big project, for example? So a lot of people quite often say, well, I don't know where to reach out to. Your parents are the first one to reach out to. And it's good for your community building within the school as well.
Absolutely. Just on that, obviously we can't have parents and everyone in at the moment, and that probably prompted your move to the virtual careers talks. How did they come about in the first place?
I think that was our careers advice was on the point of going on long service leave. So COVID hit, students were studying from home. What we could see is there was a kind of panic under the year 12s from how long is this going to take? And I actually have no idea what I want to do. You know, where do I go to? I can't come to school. We can do a Zoom conversation, but we had all those restrictions around there, you know, when it comes to child protection, for example. So I had a chat to our careers advisor and said, why don't we set up a couple of virtual talks for our students? We survey them, see which kind of universities they want to listen to, and then we go from there. And I went to a couple of universities, all they came back and said, yes, we're more than happy to do it. And then we said, what are we going to do for the kids that don't know what they want to do? It's great to have university talks, but if they, in the first place, have no idea what they want to do, how are we able to support them during the whole COVID situation, not knowing how long we will be able to sit at home, for example? So we said, you know, let's approach a couple of employers, let's talk to the Department of Industry to see, or they have some big players in the market that are willing to link in. And the response we got back was overwhelming. I think for 10 emails I sent out to employers, I got 10 yeses back. And I thought, I'm onto something here. You can see that they're happy to talk about what they do. And quite often people like to talk about what they do because they're passionate about it. So we set a whole program up for St. Leo's for only a week, mind you, 5 talks. And the other schools in the diocese, hey, we actually like this. Can we link into it as well? And I said, yeah, of course. We make the Zoom meeting. We have the capacity up to 500 students to dial in. I doubt that every single student will dial in. So, you know, we have the capacity to run it in a Zoom setup. And then the Department of Industry came back, said, well, I actually have, I have Landlease who want to talk as well. We have Amazon that wants to talk as well. And I thought, oh, you know, maybe I have to make it 2 weeks. Yeah. Well, long story short, at the end, it became 40 talks. And because I was dealing with the Department of Industry, they came back and said, hey, we actually spoke to the Department of Education. They want to talk to you to see, or you're willing to make it public, available to the public schools as well. And the AIS came back to me and said, hey, Mel, I love the initiative. Can you link in, or are you able to teach us how you do this? And then I went in panic mode because I thought, how am I going to do this? I'm not familiar with YouTube. I'm not familiar with going live. I don't know what technique we need to use. How do we protect ourselves? You know, all those kind of questions. But on the other side, I thought, you know what? If it fails, it fails. At least I've tried it. Let's give it a shot. And it turned out to be fairly successful at the end.
And so that was it. Started off as a few weeks, and it just grew and grew. And I, you know, the one thing that stood out for me that we've spoken about a lot on this, and Sam McFetridge and I spoke in the beginning about the lack of sharing and collaboration, and everyone tends to do something for their own school or for their own sector or their own state, and it's kind of stays within those boundaries rather than kind of open source. And I love the fact that the first time I saw these talks, it was just like, it's open to everybody. And I kind of, everybody in Catholic schools in Broken Bay, no, everybody. And I was just like, that's so refreshing, for no purpose other than sharing. So were there any challenges to that? Was there any conversation about it?
I think the conversation lasted for 30 seconds. No, you know what it is? It is a simple tool. It is. We have a lot of students out there. I'm not in here for my own gain. I'm not in here for the gain of the Broken Bay Diocese. You know, a student in Waka Waka would not change his mind and say, I'll leave the high school in Waka Waka and then come to the Broken Bay Diocese. So there's no benefit to that. And I think where the students are going through, we'll all go through it. And we're raising our next generation. And I think the more of that anxiety we can take away, the more energy they have left to focus on the HSC exams. You know, it's available for them. They can watch it on a Thursday night or a Sunday morning, whenever they want to watch it. If they're still unsure, mum and dad can come in and watch it as well, for example. I don't understand. I have exactly the same. I don't understand why you wouldn't share those kind of resources, because it is for the sake of our students.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people have been doing these virtual talks, some people on here. But I guess on the YouTube channel, you know, it's forever as on demand. It's, as you said, it can be completely scalable until the content is redundant, basically. What were the big learnings for anyone that's thinking, actually, we should do something similar? What were the big learnings, either in organization or production?
I think staring at yourself for half an hour is a bit of a wake-up call in the beginning. Because you become very static. If you watch the first video I've made, I'm just sitting there like, I should not move because I'm a news reporter and I need to bring this. Well, at the end, you can see my hands just flopping through the screen and all those kind of things. So you need to be engaging. At the moment, you have a very static person. It doesn't come
paranoid now. I'm
we aim for 30 minutes. 30 minutes is too long. So if you have any plans on setting some up for your own school community, for example, go less. I think the average attention span of a 15-year-old nowadays is 15-20 minutes. So that's what I can see if you look at the numbers at the end, you can exactly see for how long they've watched it. You see the numbers going down to after 20 minutes. So it's good to kind of keep to that 15-20 minutes, 20-minute time frame. And I would say, the technique is so simple that I thought, I need to be very tech savvy and I need to be able to do this, and I probably have to have 3 screens open. It's the same as I'm talking to you at the moment. That's how simple it is to link yourself up to YouTube and go live.
And so feel free to ask questions in the comments, unmute or put a question in the comments in the chat if you've got any questions on that side of things, or examples of similar things you've done or are planning. Particularly, I know there's a lot of Victorians on here. I hope you're all coping okay back in lockdown. But I'm sure, the challenges are very real, and having to replan what's happening. And in New South Wales, I think everyone's on the knife edge thinking that we might have to do the same as well. So we're all in it. But any questions around that side of things, fire them into the chat now. And what's next for the programme?
Oh, what's next? I've got a whole... So now we're lucky we can have people back on campus at St. Leo's, which is great. So I have the Girls in Trade workshop coming up next Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. So we had to split the girls up because otherwise the group would have been too big. Where they learn to use 11 different hand tools, building something, learning from female tradies, what kind of industry, how the industry looks like, what the job opportunities are there. So I'm very excited to see how the Year 8 girls are going to respond to that. Just in the learnings and the eye-opening that, girls in your position as project directors for construction companies do extremely well, because men and women, we are different, and women have a couple of really good skills when it comes to multitasking and planning and those kind of things. My big dream for 2021 is to make our teachers career ambassadors. So I'll put a slide suggestion into every single one of them that I would love to see them at least request one workshop or one guest speaker with me during the year, which means that we'll have 40 workshops or 40 guest speakers coming into the school, starting from year 7 all the way down to year 12 as well.
So based on teachers, each teacher rather than every teacher, every cohort.
Yeah. You know, my ultimate dream is that I can just eliminate myself out of the diocese. And that's because the teachers have taken up the responsibility to say, hey, I actually see your point. It is really, we're raising our students, you know, we're raising them into, by opening up all those opportunities for them to have a look at it. And I'll like this, I'll take the responsibility. And yes, I promise I'll continue to get at least one workshop or one guest speaker, or preferably both, organised per year.
Yeah, that's a great ambition. I think you'll be able to do it.
I don't know it's doable. I hope it's doable. I think it will be a great example to everyone around us at the moment who can say, hey, you know, we started with Pathways leaders and they have worked alongside our teachers to integrate industry into the curriculum, and the Pathways leaders are off to a different project.
Yeah, and you know, I can imagine a whole bank of examples where schools, and I'm sure so many schools are doing it, and I know they are being really creative about how to implement those partnerships and real examples into the curriculum. And even if we had a bank of those resources and like creative curriculum ideas for integrating industry and real life examples, that would be fantastic. So definitely share what you come up with across the curriculum. It'd be great to have something like that. And in terms of, I know there's lots of people from Victoria now. If anyone wanted to, we were talking about sharing beyond, and I know, you know, obviously here people tend to go to university, so some of those near where they live, so some of those virtual talks won't be so relevant. But you were saying before, you're absolutely happy to share the learnings, the impacts, case studies, and the industry talks far and wide across states. If anybody wants to pick them up and use them, or I guess if anyone has anything to add to, or, you know, if we can create a collective of things. I think, Maggie, if you're there, were you doing lots of similar virtual talks down in Victoria? If she's there.
I am here. Hello.
Hello.
I'm really sorry. I came in really late. I've actually just been in a Shepherd and District Careers Association meeting, so and that went just way over time. So I feel like a little bit I came in halfway through, like what Mel was talking about. So, like, yeah. We actually did a thing. I don't know if you're Liv. I don't know if you got confused with, like, I mean, we've actually got lots of stuff that runs through our Gold Murray Len, and they actually have done heaps of industry talks and lots of stuff, and they're all loaded up. Can I actually say the same concern actually is what you're saying a minute ago, Mel? Some of them are really too long, and the kids just lose it basically. And we also have like half an hour. We have like half an hour sort of reading time in the morning because obviously we're back into lockdown. And you can obviously access that time and stuff like that. But if you're going outside that, then like you just lose the students and you lose the time. And once they lose it in one, it's really hard to get them back in to do more of them. The thing that we actually did was actually the kids actually interviewed somebody they know about what they do. And actually it was the idea. It was actually, we did it when we were in shutdown last time. And actually I just gave it to the kids as a project. I said, I want you to interview somebody, you know, it could be your mum, it could be your dad, it could be your next door neighbour, or just somebody, you know, actually about what their career is actually. And the idea was just to start those conversations about what people actually do in their jobs. It's not just what it looks like from the outside. So that was kind of, I think that might be what you were confused with, Liv. Yeah.
Well, there's the other angle, the other angle in. And how, just going back into, you know, everyone's going back into lockdown, and Mel and I were talking earlier about year 12s and what the challenges are now for this cohort of year 12s. Mel, what are some of the conversations you're having with year 12s? Like we're going to have the session in 2 weeks' time on, you know, what do year 12s this year need to know? What would you say to them? So I'd love to hear from everyone here, like, what are those conversations that you're having and you wish you could say to every year 12 and their parents as they're going through this critical time?
I think for us, when you look at the year 12s, at the moment we went into lockdown here in New South Wales as well, is that I experience an increase of communication from the universities, and not only this is what we do and this is how we set it up, and those are the courses available. But what I noticed is they started increasing the ATA points. If you live in the area, you get 5 bonus points. If you study a subject at school, you get 5 extra bonus points. If you do something in the community that's relevant, you get 5 extra bonus points. And that raised with me the concern, like we have those year 12s that are doing okay, but probably won't get an ATA high enough to go into university, but with those bonus points, they will. And what we notice is a lot of parents said, oh, you're so lucky, you make it into university. Well, our concern is then, are you going to make it through your first year? Are we going to set up our year 12s for failure by giving them all those extra bonus points onto the ATA, basically, to get them into the university? And I do understand it from a university point of view because they're lost international students. But I think we need to be extremely careful and have an honest conversation basically with our year 12s and possibly the parents as well, to say, hey, listen, yes, you do receive those extra bonus points, but does that mean that the degree you have picked is suitable for you, or do you have to look at different pathways to get where you want to go to, basically? That is our biggest concern at the moment.
Oh, and can I say, you are so right, because let's face it, if they fail after the first 6 months and fall out of university, they may never ever engage in that higher tertiary learning again. And it doesn't matter what student they are, there is always a huge jump actually going from year 12 to university as it is. So the jump's actually going to get even bigger next year. And I just feel like the universities are treating it a bit like a business, because they really want bums on seats. There's no question about it, to a certain degree. And like I'm hoping actually, and they're kind of like, there's a bit of chatter about it, but I'm hoping there's going to be a whole lot more movement actually in that direction, and how they're going to support these students with that transition next year, that they possibly, for the holes that they're going to have in their education this year.
Yeah, it is a real concern, and I think we need to keep those conversations up and show parents the other side as well. Quite often students do understand it, but they feel the kind of peer pressure, like, well, but he is going, so I should be going as well, or all my family members always went to university, so I don't want to go into a TAFE pathway or an apprenticeship pathway, for example. But we need to tell them that there is a downside to this as well.
Yeah. Probably more likelihood they'll get a job out of a vocational pathway than they will out of a university one at the moment. I don't ever want to say that out loud.
Yeah, I think it's true. It's getting to the point where a job is success at the moment, isn't it? And what you don't want is people a year in feeling worse and having more mental health issues about direction and hope for the future than they do right now. It's such a challenge. I mean, in the mental health wise, are you seeing it in Victoria now? Are you seeing a lot of anxiety?
Oh, well and truly. And can I actually say, all of my year 12 students from last year are at home studying at the moment, and they haven't been back in at all either. So like we're talking about, we've already got, and we're all talking as well from the last year as well. So that's there, and then we're literally almost creating another group that are actually going to be going in and following it and stuff. So there's no question that the kids are isolated, and there's some kids that study at home beautifully, and they will study at university probably beautifully as well. But there's this huge big gap between those kids and the ones that are struggling on social levels, just actually applying themselves to work and all those sort of things as well. And can I say, they're the ones that are studying, are failing at university as we speak as well this year in their first year.
Yeah.
How do we stop the kind of default fall in, like, now?
Sorry, I'm just got all my family walking in. Sorry.
You perfected the lockdown.
Move along.
Look, I think I perfected the keep looking at the screen and have a really strict get out hand. But what can we do to prevent that, or to raise that awareness, rather than a one-on-one, like having to have every conversation? Is there something we can do together, or do we need something the media to do? I mean, I think year 13 are doing a great job with the articles they're pointing out of like actually questioning that pathway. Is that the biggest conversation you need to have with people making the decision?
I think you need to have that conversation face to face, because students, if I look at our own students, they're a bit over all the online stuff that is available, online lessons, online talks, and all those kind of things. I think you need to be brutally honest with them and say, okay, let's have a look at your marks at school. how comfortable do you feel going into university and sitting together with 500 students and listening to someone? You know, how does that make you feel? You feel comfortable, yes or no, to make that step? And if they say, well, I actually have doubts, you know, it's up to us to educate them. All those different pathways out there as well. And it's not always a nice talk to have, let's face it, because you can share their dreams when it comes to that. But for sure, those students will come back at a later stage and say, Miss, oh, I was so angry with you when I walked out, but you were right.
Yeah.
I think also it's important for students to understand that this is only the first step on their career journey. And when you have those expert speakers come in, it's really important to hear their story of where their career journey's gone, because there wouldn't be many that went to uni, became an accountant and worked in an accounting firm and are still there doing that now. People have such diverse paths. And one thing I notice is kids are quite scared about this decision they make, because I think they think whatever uni course I choose or TAFE course I choose, that's what I'm doing the rest of my life. And they don't understand that this is just that first step. So I think it's important that they understand not to be afraid of it, just step in and then see where your life goes as such. So I think that's an important thing to reinforce with them as well. This isn't the be all and end all. It's not going to change their life incredibly, you know, it's just the beginning of their journey and where they're going.
Yeah.
That's right.
Naomi's just said the same, setting expectations, making sure they know this is just the beginning of many opportunities and options. Yeah, I think it can feel like, you know, education is to here and then I'm stepping off into this big bad world and life starts and my life is that door or that door or that door and that's it. So
I actually
go on,
I actually saw read an interesting, hang on, let me see if I can put my video on, an interesting article the other day, and it had a lovely infographic in it. It was talking about the changes in technology over time and the changes in generation, and it was comparing, I don't know if you've seen it, sort of had like little mountains at the top and then little mountains underneath, and it showed us that originally, you know, way back when, technology was developing slower than each generation changed. And then it got to a point where technology and generations changed at the same pace. And now it's got to the point where technology changes so fast that it will change 2 to 3 times within a generation. And the point of the article was to say that actually nowadays, with that change, with the fact that technology is moving so fast, it's almost impossible to prepare yourself for and to set yourself a goal for your life of, you know, this is what my pathway is going to be, because technology is going to change. Jobs are going to become defunct. New jobs are going to become necessary. People are going to have to retrain, and you actually have to be flexible. And you know, I think that's the thing I enjoy from the UK in terms of university, that it's actually about learning how to learn rather than too vocational. And you know, I would love to. We had a presenter who actually he is a professor at university, and you know, he said for some people university is just a gap fill, and that's okay. But it's about, you know, it's okay to go to university and not do that well. It's about learning how to learn and learning about yourself. And, you know, if you are lucky enough to have supportive parents or the cash or, you know, whatever it is, the flexibility to do that, it's a very good option. You know, university doesn't have to be about, are you going to succeed at university? And certainly the pathway that you choose when you leave school is nowadays unlikely to be the pathway that you're in 30 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really interesting perspective of what does there's a lot of narrative around the uni dropout rates, but less about the positive experience of going to uni for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and maybe not ending up at all where you thought. We always assume that's a real negative, but you know, it's a high stakes way to test something out and an expensive way, but it's not necessarily doom and gloom. A lot of people use it as a way to build forward.
If not, just get really drunk and have lots of fun too. So make lots of people, lots of networking opportunities.
Yeah, I think you can't underestimate that bit.
Well, it's an important part as well. You know, it's a part of life where you're still kind of stress-free. You don't have a mortgage. You're not married. You don't have children. You know, it is a time of your life you should enjoy as well.
Yeah. Our presenter today actually was he's the fiery, but he did play for St Kilda for a couple of years he didn't have the most successful career at St Kilda, and he ended up being delisted and you know, coming back to WA. But he said, you know, as much as he didn't really get anywhere with the St Kilda and that kind of thing, it was such an experience just to live somewhere else, and you know how much he learned from his failure. You know, it meant that it took him 8 years to finish a degree instead of 4, and you know that he was behind a lot of the other recruits when he went into the Fireys in terms of age and everything. But he says he wouldn't change that. That actually, he may not have got anything out of it monetarily or in terms of his final career, but he got so much out of it in terms of experience and networks and everything like that. And it was really good. It was really nice, because I'd actually been talking to my kids about failure just prior to that. I'd given them the question of what's the biggest failure you've faced and what did you do about it, you know, and he made the point that actually failures can you know, you can learn more from them than successes. You know, so I do wonder, yes, it is a very high stakes way to fail going to university, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's all bad.
And is it failing, or is it just the first time you change course?
Exactly.
Well, that's right. Isn't it funny, like you talk about like kids actually going away, moving away from home. Quite often I have this conversation with our kids who are interested in doing ag, and they just go, why would I want to go and live in a city and study agriculture? And my answer quite often, do you know what, this could be the only time in your life that you'll ever live in the city, and you'll probably spend the rest of your life living in the country, working on the farm or living on the farm or wherever you are, and all sorts of stuff. And I said, gee, you could actually just take this opportunity and learn as much as you like about it, and actually take a bit of respite from the country and then come home.
Yeah, well, I think when a couple of years ago when they were talking about this, started saying, you know, nobody will do 4-year degrees anymore, and I was just like, oh, what a shame, like not for the degrees but just for that experience. And you know, there's gap years, or that's expensive and it's hard to manage, but there must be, we have to make sure there's an equivalent life experience bit where it's not just straight from education into get a job. I think in the UK they've started lots of the firms that hire lots of graduates and have said, actually don't go to uni, just come to us either as a degree apprenticeship or just straight in. They've actually bought like units, like halls of residence, where all the grads live together, but it's like on steroids because they're all getting paid as well. So it's just carnage.
Sounds like a disaster.
Yeah, an absolute disaster. But I think, you know, they're expected to go to work in the morning, so it's a real learning experience around how to balance the two. But at least they've kind of recognized the value of that, you know, that adulting skills of living on your own, and the fact that you'll have to learn that. So it's definitely worth replacing in some way, and I think you can't undervalue that.
So you're suggesting university without 2-minute noodles or something? I don't know.
I know, it sounds crazy.
Like trying to backpack after you've already got a job when you end up staying in 4-star hotels.
Yeah, exactly. That's the fear when you go to the bank, to the ATM. It's like, is it going to give me any cash? It's actually really nice to have a chat about their challenges and opportunities without, you know, and I imagine this is just what I've picked up in the last 10 minutes, that they're going to be picking up the crazy headlines about the debts and how much they're going to be repaying, and as a generation how much pressure is going to be on them. But you know, I think humans are super resilient and adaptable, and it will just be the normal for them. You know, higher tax rates or whatever it is, they'll live through it, and it's hard to keep them hopeful and happy, but it will just be the reality, won't it?
And look, it's no different. Like, I went to uni in 1990. I moved to Melbourne from country Victoria, and the year I graduated was the year I studied primary teaching. That was the year Jeff Kennett, as Premier, closed a huge amount of schools in Victoria. So there wasn't one job. I think one graduate in the whole state at the end of 1992 got a job as a teacher in a school. So it's not like this is a new thing either. Like, everyone's been through those types of experiences. And probably the best thing I did was because they knew there was not going to be any jobs. I was at Deakin, they offered an alternate teaching round to show you what else you could do with your skills. And so I went to the Australian Museum of Sport at the MCG, which was just developed, and worked in their education unit. And that was probably one of the best things I ever did, because it gave me the confidence to understand the skills I had didn't just apply to teaching, they applied elsewhere. And I've had a career in and out of teaching ever since then, in the corporate sector and construction. And yeah, so I think, you know, I know the kids are going through this now, but we've all at some stage been through something not like this, obviously, but yeah, there was no teaching jobs when I graduated, which was a terrible thing after 3 years of uni to be faced with that. So
yeah, and when we talk about, you know, adaptability being like the key skill to redesign yourself, it's just like a real intense lesson in that, isn't it? You have to plan and replan and reinvent. Whew. Yes, but it is a challenge for them. So any other ideas you have for year 12? I think, you know, the fact that you're saying it needs to be one-on-one, it needs to be guidance, maybe it's not some kind of magic bullet that we can come up with that is that education piece for parents and kids. But yeah, I love everything you've shared today, Mel, around the ambition for your program at St Leo's and beyond. I think so many people will be looking at that and going, actually, is that a framework? It sounds like a framework that's scalable, and if the curriculum team can see it and see those examples, then maybe there's hope for being able to keep up with the world of work.
Yeah, I think we need to start slow, you know, start with small projects and build it up from there. I started very small as well, just to see how the school would respond or how the teachers would respond, and take it from there. And, you know, 2021 is not going to be perfect, and neither is 2022, and neither is 2030 and 2035 most likely. But I think, you know, as long as we put our effort in and keep on bringing that word out, there is an industry out there that wants to work with us. Let's see how we can make it happen. And, you know, if you can share info, let's share info.
Yeah, I mean, I think those stories already in the chat, like those stories of how they're connected, are so valuable. So please keep sharing them. And yeah, fantastic work. And thank you so much for coming to talk to us all about it.
You're most welcome. I really enjoyed it. And once again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Liv.
I'll just put the link to to both the YouTube channel with all the virtual talks and the next session in the chat now. And people can contact you on LinkedIn. Is that the best way?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Or happy for you to spread out my email address as well. That's fine.
Okay, hold on. Let me grab it. Right, I'll drop that in as well if you're happy with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
There you go. Give everyone a chat. Thanks everyone for joining us. The recording will be around tomorrow, so Maggie, you can watch the first half backwards. And I hope everyone's doing okay in lockdown, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.